Show in three, two, and one.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome into our Tune In to Live Well show, where we talk all about things in health, wellness, fitness, and lifestyle. My name is Melissa Morales, and with me is my team member, Calvin Brillante. And today we are going to be talking about the practice of Reiki, okay, with our guest speaker and Reiki master, Bryan Castillo. Hey, Bryan.
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me again.
Thank you for being here again. So before we continue, just as a friendly reminder, we would love to hear from anyone joining in. So at any moment of the show, please feel free to chat in your questions, your comments, even share your video and unmute yourself if you have a question and just join in on the conversation. Okay, so again, Bryan, we thank you so much for joining our Tune In to Live Well show today. Before we dive into our questions, can you please go ahead and share with our listeners your background?
Yeah, so I'm a Usui Holy Fire Reiki Master. So the Usui Holy Fire is just kind of the lineage of my teaching and my practice. And I've been doing it for about 3 years now. I started back in 2020 when I had my first profound Reiki session, and that kind of led me the way to learning Reiki for myself.
Awesome. Okay, so diving right into the questions. What is Reiki, Bryan? What's Reiki and what's its history?
Great question. So I like to explain Reiki as other words or forms, such as like ki, prana, or chi, some words that people may be more familiar with, but they're all pretty much say the same thing, which is the universal life force energy that is flowing through us, around us. It's what gives life to everything that exists in this world, and that's kind of what Reiki is.
Cool. So with its history, where did Reiki come from? Because for me personally, this is kind of a newer practice to me, and I'm sure to some of our listeners here as well. So what's the history behind Reiki?
Yeah, absolutely. So Reiki is something that has been around for thousands of years. They've heard about Reiki in ancient texts in Hindu and India and China, but wasn't discovered until kind of recently. I say recently, only about 100 years ago in the early 1900s by Dr. Mikao Usui, who is from Japan, and he was an avid scholar. He was really into philosophy, and his major purpose and goal was to try to find a healing practice that was simple, that anybody could learn. And so he went on a 21-day fast and meditation. And at the end of his fast, at the end of his practice, that's when this bright light of Reiki came to him in a vision, and he had a moment of enlightenment. And from that's kind of when Reiki was rediscovered.
Super cool. I love hearing the history of Reiki. I remember it, especially when you said the history in the last show. So I'm really glad to share that with our listeners today. So going back to the practice of Reiki, who is this best suited for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So because Reiki is universal life force, it's something that we all have. It's really suitable for anyone who is open and willing to connect with Reiki. The biggest block or the biggest obstacle when it comes to working with Reiki is that limiting belief of, oh, it's not for me. Oh, Reiki isn't doing anything for me. But in that moment, you're kind of blocking that connection to Reiki. So it is for everyone, but it's for those who are willing to open to Reiki. So that's kind of how I have to say it.
I hear you. And I know we even discussed previously, like, I'm definitely open to, trying this out, give it a try. But other than coming into a Reiki session and having that open mind right off the bat, how else can one prepare for their first Reiki session?
Yeah, that's super important. I always like to say it's about setting the intention, setting the space internally and externally. So the way I like to do it, if it's a virtual distance Reiki session, I always invite the client to create a space, like light a candle, set the mood, set the lighting, create some music, to kind of just create that mindset of stepping into healing, stepping into releasing what's no longer meant for you. Or if it's in person, I really create an environment suitable for your ultimate healing. So I create sacred container. I make sure to clear the energy. I ground my own energy to make sure that I'm a clear vessel for Reiki to flow. And in that way, those are a couple things just to be mindful of when kind of stepping into your Reiki session.
I see. Okay, so something stuck out to me when you were just explaining that. You said a secret container?
Oh, sorry, a sacred container.
Sacred container, okay.
Yeah, so I make sure to kind of create a sacred container to shield us from any outside, influences that aren't meant to be in the space. And so that creates something that's more calm, more relaxing, and kind of more meant for you. Because sometimes there could be outside influences that are trying to get into the session.
I see. Okay, so let's say, I'm actually surprised that you also mentioned that there's virtual options when it comes to Reiki, because, when we go into these different like therapeutic techniques, whether, the most common one being like a massage therapy session, which I know is completely different. But the fact that we can do like Reiki through virtual means, what can you expect both in a virtual session and a live session, if there's any differences between them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the biggest difference is that when you are doing it virtually, you're kind of in the comfort of your own home. So you're more willing to be receptive to Reiki. Usually when you're outside of your house, whether it's like at a clinic or somewhere else, there's a little bit of reservation, a little bit of a boundary just because you're in a new environment subconsciously. And so that can create some block when you're having your healing session. So those are kind of the differences energetically. In person, I like to do like light touch. And during those sessions, clients can feel a lot of warmth or tingling emanating from my hand. If it's a virtual session, you won't really be feeling that much, but you will start to feel more of the energy within your body versus like my hands on your body. So they still have the same benefits, still just as powerful as virtual versus in person, just the environment just might be a little bit different.
I see. Okay, that's good to know. So you mentioned already some great benefits that come with this practice. Are there any other physical or mental benefits to this treatment that you haven't mentioned already?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest one is physically, it's about relaxing the nervous system. So a lot of times we live in a society where we're so used to being in this fight or flight response, being on the go, being on the rush. So our nervous system tends to be like in a very heightened state, kind of like in a tense state. And because of that, our body isn't able to relax and recuperate and recover. And so sometimes we can be feeling anxious, we can be feeling stressed out, depressed, and those are some of the things that Reiki can help alleviate. It can also help with insomnia. I've been sending Reiki to my mom who works night shifts as a nurse, so her sleep schedule, her circadian rhythm is like all over the place. But since teaching her Reiki, because she does Reiki for herself now, she like doesn't use meds. She sleeps throughout the night. She doesn't have as many headaches. So I found that to be like really good feedback.
Oh, that's super cool. You said you taught your mom Reiki?
Yeah, I taught her Reiki over the course of a year. So now she does herself Reiki while at work because, it's kind of stressful being in a hospital. And so that's been helping her kind of create her own boundary, kind of help regulate her own energy.
Oh, absolutely. That's so neat. Okay, so I have to ask then, even for those logged in, you might be having this question. Can anyone be a Reiki practitioner then? Or is there a certain license or certification you need to have?
Yeah, that's a good question. So because Reiki is universal, it really means anyone can do it. We all have the life force flowing through us. It's just all about, are we tapped into that connection? Are we open to that type of resonance with Reiki? And usually I find that people that are looking to learn Reiki or kind of connect with Reiki are those who are genuinely empathic. They're kind of highly sensitive to energy, emotions, and kind of things in their environment. And because of that, they have this heightened sense of feeling, of sensory input. And that's what really helps with Reiki because we receive a lot of information through our senses. And sometimes that can be really helpful during a session.
I see. Okay, that's good to know then. But now that I've asked About 5 questions now. I just want to give a reminder to our listeners. If you have a question that's in your mind about this very interesting practice, please don't hesitate to chat in, unmute yourself, just join in on our conversation here. Okay. But Kelvin, did you have a question?
I do have a question. Okay, so Melissa asked, like, can anybody practice it? I think I have 2 questions. So, one, what would be like the average length of somebody being able to master Reiki? Like, how long does it usually take for them to practice until, once they get that mindset of like, I mastered this and now I can, teach others, or I could provide this Reiki practice to other individuals?
Yeah, I love that question. And the main reason why I love that question is because it alludes to people's unique path. So it's hard to say it's going to take 3 months, it's going to take 1 month. It really depends on your commitment to your spiritual practice, to your own individual growth. Like for me, I didn't take the master level until like 2 years into it, just because I wanted to really, cultivate that connection with Reiki and with myself, honestly. Some people, they just go through the levels like in like one weekend, class setting, which is great, but I think it's really about that effort, that work you put into it, the experience and the knowledge you gain from that kind of process. And I think that's where you start mastering Reiki, but really it's just a practice to help master yourself, because we are Reiki, we are energy, and it's just kind of navigating the energy within our bodies to navigate the energy around us. Ooh, I'm getting chills as I'm saying it.
So I guess my next question is like, how would one know that they've achieved some sort of level of Reiki practice? So, for example, like myself, if I was just starting like today, like what would I expect to feel or see if I have achieved some sort of like Reiki level?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because everyone's different. So how we teach Reiki is through an oral kind of tradition. And then we also do placements where we kind of place the Reiki and attune it to your body. So now your field is attuned to Reiki. So just with intention, you tap into it. It's kind of like a stream flowing through water. If there's like branches and leaves, there's some blockage, right? That blockage could be trauma, emotional distress, kind of stuff like that. But the more we tap into that stream, it's going to clear out more and more and more, creating a bigger channel, a bigger channel, and a bigger channel. And so people will feel lighter. They'll feel their energy more open. They'll even look like they're emanating light and energy. They can feel warmth or tingles in their hands sometimes. Sometimes they feel magnetism in their hands. If they feel drawn to a certain area of their body, their hand will kind of intuitively be drawn to that area. So it kind of depends on people's level of perception. Some people are very visual, so maybe they'll see colors, or I've heard some Reiki practitioners, they can kind of see like the Reiki like pinpointing, almost like a pin, like, oh, okay, go here next, go there next. For me, I'm not very visual, I'm more like sensory, so I'm more like feeling. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, so and then now you mentioned colors. Do any colors mean anything? Like, does it resonate with something? Like, does purple mean something? Does red, yellow mean something?
Yeah, so I definitely believe colors do mean something, just because
Okay.
colors are emitted from a specific frequency of light, and so because of that, light is energy. So if someone sees red, it could be something having to do with their root chakra, which is more about safety, security, finances. Or if they see purple, it could be more about trust, surrendering, being connected to their higher purpose. And so different colors could mean different things.
I see. So when you say if one does see like the color red or one does see the color purple, does that mean that that's where their stress is and that's where their mindset is, or does that mean like that's what they're focused on at that time of practice?
Yeah, I can see where you're kind of going. It kind of depends on the person. So sometimes if it comes up, it could be just kind of saying, oh, this is highlighted, this is something they need to work on. Or it could be the opposite. It can be like, oh, this has been really strong. This has been really good. And because sometimes people need that empowerment, that kind of positive reinforcement. And so in that way, it could be, yeah, this is a really strong chakra you have, or a really strong energy you have. But others where they need that kind of more critical kind of self-criticism, it's like, oh, this is where maybe you need more work on. Maybe you need more kind of balance and effort in. So it kind of depends on the situation.
I see. Okay, got it. So my next question is personally for you, Bryan. So you've been doing this for quite a while now. So starting from, your start of practice, how long would you say that it took you to feel that first sensation of Reiki, and then how long did it take you to master it from there?
Yeah, I love these questions. So, after the first couple of classes, I already felt some sensation. For me, it was more tingling. I felt like there was pricking in my fingers, and when I asked my master, it's like, oh, it's because your energy nodes are activating, so they're opening. Think about when you pop a balloon, it's like opening. It's releasing that energy. So that's kind of how I thought about it. Over the course of maybe a year or two, it would go on and off where I wouldn't feel anything versus I would feel things very strongly. But I learned that over the course of those couple years, when I didn't feel anything, it was just trusting. It was, sorry, teaching me, am I trusting the Reiki? Am I still having doubt within myself? Am I still having doubt with the energy that I'm working with, doubt with the person I'm working with? It's just highlighting areas in my shadow that are still suppressed. I needed to heal and kind of just process a little bit more.
Got it. Okay. All right. So we have a few minutes left. I do have one last question. So I feel like folks who practice Reiki, they're very in tune with their energy, right? Now, what are some symptoms that you experience if you feel like I don't know how to state this, but like if you feel like negative Reiki or negative energy, like what are some side effects that you feel?
Yeah, so something I want to highlight is Reiki is not negative or positive, it's just
Okay.
energy. And so it's really that perspective that we attach to energy that makes it negative. So, but it's just something to keep in mind when you work with your own energy. It's like, where did we learn this from? Where did we kind of learn this perspective from this kind of negative energy? But common things you can feel if you do feel negative energy is kind of like a tension. Sometimes you'll feel your body retract. For me, I'm very body language oriented, so I'll kind of have my arms crossed. I'll have my body facing to the side, or my voice will be a little bit lower. So you can kind of tune into these things for yourself and kind of figure out how your body responds to negative energy. With Reiki, it helps release that negative energy because it brings in such powerful light energy. It kind of dissolves it, kind of disintegrates it. And because of that, it creates space for you to see it from a different perspective and to kind of attach a more positive perspective, transmuting that energy. And so that's kind of how it works.
I see. Okay. Cool. I just gotta be more mindful of my body and myself.
Exactly. Yeah.
That was the last question I had.
Those are really good questions, Kelvin. Yeah. No, those were really good questions. And I know we only have one more minute, but I have one more question on my mind, okay? Because we also, coming from the fitness center, right? We have a lot of members come in here. They do their workouts because it gives them those, happy endorphins, makes them feel set and ready for their day. So I have to ask for like a highly active population or individual even, let's say that they're kind of already happy with themselves, they don't see that they have any like self-doubt or anything. Would they still benefit from Reiki, or is it kind of like maybe that individual doesn't have to do Reiki as much as another one? If that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And again, Reiki is meant for anybody and anyone who's open. For those that are already kind of high vibing, they're already kind of did a lot of their own healing process. It's going to amplify their field even more. So what they're kind of trying to manifest, their desires are going to come to them even stronger, more quickly, just because their field is already so expanded. So it's so large. Anything that they kind of think of, it's going to manifest pretty quickly. And that's kind of what I've found for myself over the 3 years, as my field expands, like things just come quick to me. I just think of it, and it's like if there's like synchronicities. I see a sign, and it tells me, oh, it's like coming, or it's like just around the corner. So just some things that for people on that level can kind of expect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this has been very enlightening for me, and I'm sure for all of our listeners who are listening in now and who will be listening in later. But how can we connect with you, Bryan, if you're wanting to maybe try out a Reiki session? What's your email? How can we connect with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have a website. It's spelled ReikifYD.com. So Reiki5.com. That's where you can look up more information about my sessions. I also teach Reiki. So if you've already worked with Reiki before and you feel a deeper calling to learn Reiki for yourself, that's something that I also offer. I also have an Instagram. You can follow me for just more personal stuff and like Reiki information. It's at Reikifyd, ReikifYD, on Instagram as well.
FYD on Instagram. Perfect. Okay, well, we want to thank you so much, Bryan, for your time, for sharing all your knowledge and experiences with us regarding Reiki. If anyone else has any other questions, please don't hesitate to email us at livewellfitnesscenter.com, and we will definitely send those questions to Bryan, okay? Hopefully we can have you in a future show because this session was great. But if you are listening in, again, please don't hesitate to email us if you have any other inquiries about our upcoming Tune Into Live Well shows, our challenges, all to help us all living well and staying healthy. Okay? Thank you again for joining in. Have a great day.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Bryan.